All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Monster in My Closet. So, Morgan, this week, are we scared or scary?
We're scary. We're scary. We're out there destroying people's careers and whatnot. So let's get going.
Yeah, just lighting shit on fire. I love it.
Yeah.
Burning
Yeah.
bridges. So, imagine that you're the manager who laughs along with the team, you foster a warm, congenial atmosphere, and you really are kind of loved by employees. But underneath that veneer of camaraderie, lies a palpable tension, right? And that tension is those unspoken truths of performance issues that you don't address, potential growth that's stunted, and that paradox of being the liked leader, that beacon of positivity, versus an inadvertent architect of stagnation, or being that inadvertent architect of stagnation. So let's talk about that challenge, right? And how do we get underneath that? So three big things we want to cover today. So we want to talk about the balance that of the desire of being liked with the need to enforce rules and expectations as a leader, and then understanding the impact of a leader's need for approval on decision making, which is pretty toxic. And then third, what are some of the strategies for building respect without compromising likability? So,
Mhm.
right, this is a meaty, big, hefty topic. So, how do you manage that desire to be liked with the necessity, which is truly a necessity in a work environment, to make tough decisions? How do you do that?
I think the first thing you need to do is get your head in the right place, which I think is a theme now on the podcast. And it's how do you personally view feedback, right? Or saying, this is what we're going to do, asserting your position. So if you view that as a conflict, then any good conflict avoider is going to avoid doing that, right? But on the flip side, if you view helping a person be successful, to grow, to prepare them for bigger opportunities, then why wouldn't you give a person specific direction or feedback? Just like if you have a child and you have a hot stove and they go to touch the hot stove, you're going to go, no, don't do that, right? You're saying definitively you may not touch that stove, right? It's not because you want to be in conflict with your child. It's because you're making sure that they stay out of trouble, right?
Yeah,
And that they're safe.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree, and it's that kind of notion of what's your role as a leader, right?
Mhm.
Is your role to be liked, or is your role to help get things done and to ensure that the folks on your team are ultimately successful in their current role and in their careers, right? Those are kind of, in my mind, two very different approaches and ways of operating.
Yeah,
Um,
there's an interesting thing when you talk about the role that one of my observations is people are either laissez-faire in their management role, like, hey, I want to give my people the space to grow, or they're micromanagers and they're in every aspect of the business, right? And if you talk to the laissez-faire manager, they'll be like, well, I don't want to micromanage. And then the micromanager will be like, I don't want anarchy and chaos in my organization. I mean, good Lord, those are not the only two choices, right? I mean, there's a lot of space between laissez-faire and micromanagement, right? So it's good to give your folks wings to go do stuff and to assert themselves and have autonomy. But if they're going in a wrong direction, it's on you, right? It's
yeah,
on you to help them course correct.
yeah, yeah. I could not agree more. I feel like, um, I had a friend a long time ago who had a daughter, and they believed that it was not their role to stifle their daughter's spirit. And they would let their daughter do anything. And the one thing that really kind of got under my skin was she didn't want to wear clothes. And so she would run around naked. She would go they would bring her places and she was naked. And it's like,
Not appropriate.
that is an unrealistic way to view life. There are, sure, there is some there are some boundaries within which that person or that individual should be free as a bird. And yet there are some confines of good, safe parenting, good, structured ways of operating in an organization that you just need to abide by. And
Okay,
so,
I want to double click on that.
yeah,
Let's talk about that. Why? I love this example. Why is it not okay to set the expectation with your child that they can run around naked all the time? Let's just play that out.
yeah. Well,
So,
I mean,
so what happens when they have to go to school, or, okay, let's just say you homeschool them. I'm just going to be way out there. I'm going to homeschool my kid. At some point, it's going to be wildly inappropriate for that child to be outside without their clothes on.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And a little later down the road, it is going to actually be illegal to, to be outside with your clothes on. So how are you helping that child? I
yeah,
promise we're making a point here. How are you making that child prepared for adulthood, prepared for the rest of their life by setting the expectation that they never have to wear clothes, right? Exactly the same thing in the office. How are you preparing your employees to grow in their careers if they don't understand? Sometimes you have to bite the bullet and you have to do things you don't like to do, or you have to learn new skills, or you have to report to a new person, or whatever. Things change and you have to be able as a human to adapt to those changes.
yeah. I think that is such a great message. And it's that notion of, like, in the world, there are mores, acceptable types of behavior. There are expectations, and inside of those, you have freedom to do things and to kind of be who you are. But there has to be some set of boundaries within a person's within an organization, just so that everybody has a common understanding of how to operate. Now,
Mhm.
do those need to change at times? Right? Absolutely, 100%. Right? When I first started 112 years ago in the world of work, we wore suits. We called
Mhm.
people Mr. and Miss or Mrs.
Mhm.
Uh, Men wore slacks, women wore dresses. Uh, there wasn't universal representation of different genders or different ways to express yourself. Now, those were wrong, but in at the time, they were the acceptable modes of operating.
Mhm.
And we changed those ways of operating over time. And I think we have to make sure that there's an understanding of there's just rules that you have to work within in
Yeah.
order to be successful. And over time, you can change those rules. But while those rules are in place, it's important that people know how to operate and be successful within them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think let's give the listeners some tools they can
Yeah, let's
use.
do it.
So back in the day, I'm going to name names because I'm going to say something good about this company. So I worked for a small company called SPSS. If you've ever done statistics in college, you're probably using SPSS to run those statistics. It is one of the best companies I've ever worked for. It was quite small, 1,200 people, and about 1,100 of them had PhDs. So
Wow.
it was not for the faint of heart. But at the time, the CEO would grill us on certain things. What is our mission? What is our vision? What are our values? And then who do we work for? Who do we serve? Right?
Mm,
And in who we serve, there was a right and wrong answer. And I found that out the hard way. I only made the mistake once, because I said we serve our customers. And the right answer is that we served our stockholders because we are a publicly traded company. And
interesting.
and so, back in the day, I don't know that I fully appreciated what that meant, but as I've progressed through my career, and I've actually become a stockholder in the corporations that I'm working in. I get it now, right? So I will see a behavior, and Anil, I know you've heard me say this, like as a stockholder, I feel like that would be a poor decision for this company, right? So if you're thinking about how would outside people investing in your company view this behavior, it really puts a different light on it. Or view a decision, right? View your strategy, view this employee and their unwillingness to participate under the structures that have been set forth. So I use that as a really easy true north for me when I have to think, okay, as a stockholder, how do I feel about what's going on right now? And then
Mm,
I can adjust my decision making if I need to.
that's really awesome. I love that notion of being kind of having that owner's mindset,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Or right?
Exactly.
I think that's a powerful place to come from. Um, I think the other strategy that I would use, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, is what's your role? So as a leader, is your role to be liked, or is your role to make your organization, your little slice of the world, ultimately successful? And inside of that, you can be a cheerleader and a promoter and a coach and an enforcer and a bunch of other things that you could do all
Mhm.
inside of that role of being an owner of that little slice of the world, and bringing that kind of mentality to it. Um, and I think it's just it's a great mentality, a great hat to put on as you're kind of thinking about how I would operate or how I should operate.
Yeah,
Um,
I think about building other leaders. Like
mm,
with my teams, like I want to see my team excel past me, right? I want to build people that can not only do my job, but do my boss's job. Like, how can I prepare them to leapfrog into their next career opportunity? And that means helping them be able to navigate the crazy dynamics of corporate America and all that entails.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think and you did that with me, right? You hired me and prepared me for what was next, and I always appreciated that. And I think that's just a good tactic to take, as a
Mhm.
leader. So what's the danger of this? That we hear this term a lot, this notion of toxic positivity. What's the danger of being too positive, toxically positive?
Well, risk. I
Hmm.
know you said danger, and I'm just responding with the word risk, but I've spent a career in governance, risk, and compliance, and to me, um, when you have toxic positivity, that means that you're unwilling to look at your stuff objectively and talk about what's not working, right?
Mhm.
Or talk about what can be better, what needs improvement, right? Um, I get inherently nervous when I ask someone on a huge project how things are going, and they're like, "It's wonderful, it's perfect." I'm like, please, for the love of God, don't lie to me. Just like let me, just help me understand. I want to know everything, right? Because I want to make sure I'm setting you up for success, right? And I just think it's really important to be honest. Again, we're all professionals, we're all adults. If something's not working or could use improvement, let's talk about that. That's what your coworkers and your management team is for, is to help you do things even better than you're currently doing them. So I also, the other downside or danger is, and this is just my perspective, I don't trust people that never say that things are shit, right? I mean, if you're always telling me things are good, I'm like, you are not okay in the head. You're not okay in the head if you think things are always good. And
Yes.
now I can't trust you. So that's where our
Yes.
relationship's at.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that. I mean, I think this notion, so toxic positivity is that whole thing where, and we actually have a definition. We'll share it with you guys if that's something that you're interested in. But kind of the Reader's Digest version here is, it's the belief that no matter how dire or difficult a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset, which is, also what we call delusion. And it just doesn't help us be productive. And in my experience, it kind of has two results. Either nothing gets done because everything's going so well, you don't need to change, or, and this is maybe worse, that the wrong things are getting done and nobody's correcting that. So
Mhm.
oftentimes what happens in an organization when you have that kind of laissez-faire manager who is kind of toxically positive, they don't have a good handle on what's happening in their organization. And people are going off and doing things that may be counterproductive to the success of the overall organization. And
Mhm.
it's important that we understand kind of help how to help our folks course correct, right? Give them the freedom to make decisions and to do things, but also to step in when it's going to go the wrong way, when we're going to Thelma and Louise over the cliff. Like, that's
Mhm.
fun in the movie, but not necessarily productive in an organization. And so I think that notion of toxic positivity is something that we have to be very wary of. And I think, like
Mhm.
you said, Morgan, if I'm working with somebody who can't articulate some of the things that could be different, better, more effective, I almost feel like they're not paying attention. And that's dangerous to me.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to clarify something that you said earlier about, no matter how bad it is, you maintain a positive attitude. So just to double
Mm,
click on that, you should absolutely be positive. It's not saying you can't be positive, um, but you also have to be realistic, right?
mm,
So toxic positivity is really at the expense of all other things. So you're not being realistic. You're not dealing with the other less pleasant things that might be involved in a particular situation. So we're definitely not saying you can't be positive. We're saying that it you can be positive and still be realistic about what's going on at the same time.
yeah, that's good clarification. I certainly
Yeah.
don't want people to not be positive because that's undermining as well. But I mean, I think,
Yeah.
right. But you have to sprinkle it with a little realism. Um,
You
that's
know,
very, very important.
as I was preparing for this episode, um, I was thinking to myself, what if the person doesn't know any other way?
Mm,
Um, So let's say we have a leader that, has toxic positivity, and they're never willing to talk about anything negative or coach or uh, direct their employees, etc. There may be something really real behind that, other than, I'm just being a difficult individual and I want people to like me, right? Um, and so I started thinking about what are all the reasons why someone um, might exhibit these behaviors. And it's possible that that person doesn't know how to give constructive feedback, right? Or they're not comfortable giving constructive feedback, or and this is one that I'm very interested in talking about, is they don't feel like they have the right to give constructive feedback. So think about imposter syndrome. So I really started thinking about, wow, if you're reflecting and you know that you always like, I'm so positive and I'm laissez-faire, I think my ask would be to, as an individual, to try to unpack why you're like that. Like, what is the motivation? Are you avoiding conflict? No, I'm fine with conflict. Well, maybe I'm not comfortable giving feedback, or I haven't done it enough to be comfortable with it. So I think I don't want people to get the idea that's like, oh, just fix it, give some feedback. People may be really having some challenges with uh, effective coaching and direction, and negative feedback or not positive feedback with employees, peers, etc. So I know you've been in this space for a while, Anil, and I'm interested in your thoughts.
I love this notion of uh, it, imposter syndrome. It's funny because I had a conversation just this week with some folks about, we've made all these changes in the organization, and there's some people that are doing some new things and have some really visible roles, and in this conversation, somebody literally said the words to me, um, I'm not exactly sure why I got chosen for this. I'm having some imposter syndrome, which I didn't know that was a verb, but let's go with it for now. And, I think what one of the things that you said that I want to double click on is that it's important to get a grounding of your role and an
Mm-hmm.
understanding of why were you chosen to do the thing that you were doing or are doing. I think invariably leaders make choices about people based on their experience with them and their understanding of them. And so I think you want to get clear for yourself, like, why am I here? And what's the expectation for me to to be successful, and what are the kind of boundaries of my role? And and that's what I told this person, that you got 15 years of experience in this arena.
Mm-hmm.
You came from an organization that did something really, really similar. And
Yeah.
in this previous role that you had in this organization, we witnessed you having these similar kinds of conversations. There was more to it, but
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
essentially, at the end of that conversation, she was like, okay, I get it. Or this gender non-specific person said, I get it. Sorry, I'm terrible at that. I'm going to slip up with the name and then we'll get sued and then
No,
it'll
no,
be the
no,
Morgan
no,
show.
no.
Um,
Actually, everyone in Anil's life is a woman. So if we
yeah,
just so you
e-
know, that's his
everybody
frame of
important.
reference,
Yeah,
is a
everybody
woman.
important in my life is a woman. Everybody smart is a woman. Uh, so
I think that to pile on what you're saying, and again, I really want to make sure we're leaving people with some tools here. If if you find yourself in a situation and you've gotten to the point where you're like, I suck at giving feedback or difficult feedback, and I do worry about how people perceive me. I don't feel like I'm always making the best choices. I would encourage those individuals to reach out to their manager and see if there's any coaching opportunities
Yeah.
for them, right? There are professionals out there that can help you work through the tools and everything to get more comfortable, asserting your authority in a way that doesn't alienate your people, right? Helping you give more challenging feedback and setting boundaries for your team members, right?
Yeah.
So, and you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm not smart enough. I don't want to ask my boss for coaching because they'll think I'm dumb, right? Just like, hey, I have identified this thing as a gap, and I would like to close that gap. Is there coaching available? That's
Yeah.
all there has to be to it. Just a
Yeah.
very simple conversation. You don't have to expose all your past wounds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the only other thing that I'd add to that is, in addition to coaching, the other thing that I would strongly suggest is get a mentor, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I know that in every organization that I've worked in, I've found a person who I respect in the organization
Yeah.
outside of the department that I work in,
Yes.
who I am very honest and upfront about. Like, I want to use you, right? I want you to be my mentor. I'm going to bring you things, and I want your coaching on how you would handle it.
Mhm.
And it's just a great method. First of all, it's great networking. It's a good way to get in good with other leaders, and it's also just
Mhm.
a good way to learn at the foot of somebody who's done it already, and they can give you their kind of insight about it. So,
Oh, I
yeah,
had one more thing.
yeah,
One more thing to
please.
that. So, this person was not an official mentor of mine, um, nor was she my manager. But I had a peer in an organization once, and oh my God, she was just so flawless in everything. I mean, she could tell you no, or I don't think so, or go to your left, and you'd be, yes, thank you. Thank you for bestowing your incredible wisdom upon me. I mean, the way she would manipulates kind of people have the wrong idea about that word, but she could turn the situation and always make it a positive, no matter what it was that she was delivering to the client or to the employee. It was absolute art. And I would listen to her, and I'd listen to recordings from meetings that we were in to hear exactly how she was delivering pieces of information to clients or employees. Um, and sometimes if I knew she had to give some difficult information to someone, I would ask if I could sit in on the
Mm,
call if it wasn't violating privacy or whatever, right? Like if it's just a client discussion, I would just listen in because I was fascinated by how she was going to navigate that situation. So
yeah.
that's a case where I was learning through observation. So if you have someone out there in your organization that just freaking rocks it every time, just observe them,
Yeah.
sit in on it, pay attention. Yeah, because you can
That's
really learn just from observing.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. I mean, I think that that's such a powerful thing to leverage other people's experience. And so I think, right, just to kind of put a bow on this, the
Yeah,
notion of being liked is important, right? You don't want to be a manager or a leader who's not liked, but it can't
right.
be the driving force behind everything that you do. And so you want to know your role, right? Really clearly understand who you are within that organization. Bring that shareholder or owner's mindset and get some coaching, and or find a mentor or somebody you can observe who does it really well, that can help you get the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to really play the role of a leader in the most effective and positive way.
That's
So,
right. Leaders building leaders.
people who need people, they're the
On that note,
luckiest people. All right, everybody. On that note, thank you very much for listening to another episode of Monster in My Closet, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.